The storm had not even finished rolling over the quiet neighborhood of Maple Creek when I first heard the sharp crack, wood splitting, metal twisting, something giving up under the weight of wind and time. By the next morning, the only thing louder than the groaning branches outside was the sound of my own chest tightening as I stepped onto my porch and saw the damage. Fences had toppled, roofs were shedding shingles, and across the street, the old wooden gate belonging to my neighbor, Marianne, hung crooked like a wounded limb. I didn't know it then, but walking across that street would change my life in ways I never expected. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of small actions that change everything, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe. It truly supports the channel and keeps stories like this alive. The morning air still carried the wet chill of the storm as I headed toward the leaning gate. For months, I had watched Marianne from afar, not because she was mysterious, but because she moved like someone carrying invisible weight. She was in her early 40s, always neat, always polite, always reserved. She lived alone in a modest two-story home with a peeling blue porch and a yard filled with rose bushes she took care of like fragile memories. I, Aaron, had moved to this small town in Colorado after losing almost everything: my job, my long-term relationship, and what felt like my sense of direction. Fixing things had always been my way of coping, and maybe that was why I gravitated toward that broken gate before Marianne even asked. As I approached, she stepped out onto her porch, holding a mug with both hands like it was the only warm thing left in her world. Her eyes were soft, kind, but tired in a way that made me wonder how long she had been holding herself together. She didn't speak in dialogue, but the gratitude in her expression was unmistakable as she motioned toward the damaged gate. It felt like a silent plea. The kind people make when they're used to doing everything alone but finally allow themselves to accept help. I got to work with a toolbox I kept in my garage, grateful for something to focus on besides the mess inside my own life. The storm had knocked loose more than just screws. It had shattered a few of the wooden panels, leaving gaps that exposed the vulnerable parts of her yard. I replaced the broken boards, sanded down the jagged edges, and realigned the hinges until the gate stood straight and strong again. While I worked, Marianne watched from the porch, occasionally brushing a loose strand of hair behind her ear, her shoulders easing little by little as if the fixed gate somehow stitched a small part of her heart back together too. When I finished, she walked toward me slowly, almost cautiously. She placed her hand over her chest, as though steadying the emotion building there, and she whispered with a quiet sincerity that carried more weight than she intended. She said I deserved a little extra reward, not in a romantic or suggestive way, but in the way someone offers heartfelt appreciation, when words alone aren't enough. She handed me a small, handcrafted wooden cross she had carved herself. It was smooth, simple, and beautiful, etched with patterns of vines and tiny roses. She explained that she made them in her spare time as a reminder that nobody was ever truly abandoned, no matter how lost they felt. That moment struck deeper than I expected. I had been drifting through life like a man walking through fog, unsure what direction to take. But something about her gesture, quiet, personal, vulnerable, felt like a spark in the dark. Over the next few weeks, Marianne and I found reasons to talk more often. Sometimes it was about the roses she tended with patient hands, sometimes about the storms life threw unexpectedly, and sometimes about nothing in particular. Just enough to fill the silence neither of us wanted to sit in alone. The more she spoke, the more I understood that she carried her own grief. She had lost her husband 3 years earlier, a loss that carved quiet spaces into her home and her spirit. She never said it directly, but I could see it in the way she lingered by the porch railing when the sun dipped low, as though searching for someone who once stood beside her. One late afternoon, she brought out 2 glasses of iced tea and set them on the porch table. The sun cast warm stripes across the wooden boards, and the air smelled faintly of pine and wet earth. I felt something inside me settle, like a loose piece finally sliding into place. She told me, without dialogue format, just soft narration, that the night of the storm had been especially hard for her. The wind had sounded too much like the night she lost her husband. She said she didn't know what she would have done if the gate stayed broken, because caring for her home was the one thing tying her to the life she built with him. But then she smiled, a small but healing smile, and said fixing the gate felt like fixing a boundary inside her heart, one she thought would stay broken forever. The weeks turned into months. I helped her with little things around the house, and she helped me see that life could be rebuilt from the ground up, the same way I had fixed that wooden gate. Patiently, piece by piece, hinge by hinge. We didn't rush anything, we didn't define anything. We simply existed in the quiet comfort of shared moments, healing together in ways neither of us expected. One winter evening, after the first snowfall covered the yards in a blanket of quiet white, I found myself standing at the edge of her driveway. The house glowed with warm golden light from inside, and for the first time in a long time I felt a pull towards something that resembled hope. Marianne stepped out onto the porch, wearing a soft knit sweater and holding that same small wooden cross she'd given me months ago. She gently traced her fingers along the carved vines and told me she had started making more crosses, one for every person who had helped her keep moving forward since her loss. She said I had been the first one in a long time, and in that moment, something inside me broke and rebuilt itself all at once. I realized that she wasn't rewarding me for fixing her gate. She was thanking me for showing up, for being present, for caring, for being the kind of person who doesn't walk away from someone who's hurting. The winter months passed slowly, filled with simple gestures that meant more than grand confessions ever could. She began leaving small handmade things on my porch, carved stars, painted stones, tiny notes with Bible verses written in her neat handwriting. I found comfort in them the way people find comfort in warm blankets or familiar songs. And then one cool spring night, as the sky shifted from gold to lavender, I walked her to her gate. The same gate that started everything. It stood strong, steady, and beautiful after months of rain, wind, and sun. It felt symbolic, the way some things end up being without anyone planning it. We stood there for a moment, our breaths mixing in the cool evening air, our hearts beating to their own quiet rhythms. There were no confessions, no declarations, just the simple understanding that sometimes people step into our lives at the exact moment we need them most. If this story has touched your heart in any way, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your support truly helps us continue creating meaningful stories. Before this story ends, I have a special request. Please comment below and let me know which moment moved you the most. In the end, I learned that kindness doesn't need grand gestures. Sometimes it starts with a broken gate. Sometimes it begins with a storm. And sometimes the most extraordinary changes come from the quietest, simplest acts, like helping a neighbor, accepting a handmade wooden cross, or choosing to stay when life feels heavy. Marianne and I are still writing our story, one gentle day at a time. And every time I walk past that gate, I'm reminded that even the broken parts of our lives can be rebuilt, stronger, steadier, and more meaningful than before.